I think the person who killed her will be worried about this podcast. And the new attention, media attention and local attention back on it. I think, given that they would have experienced this anxiety, which we see through the haste, I think it will reignite that anxiety. I think that once this comes out, this podcast comes out and there's media coverage, I think the person will become worried again. They'll probably be a bit cocky because they've got away with it for a long time. But in the back of mind, they'll be going, oh, people could still talk. Because this is not the kind of offender who would keep his mouth shut. I think he's spoken in some way about it. He may not have said, I killed her, but he may have said things about the crime, things about the car, things about the handbag and the shoes that could just stand out to someone who heard it. And it's those people that the investigation needs to come forward.
That's Chris Illingsworth, an FBI-trained criminal profiler who investigated Rachelle's murder in 2003. I'm Ashley Hansen. This is episode 6 of Dear Rachelle, a podcast by True Crime Australia.
I think this offender would have a domestic violence history by now, maybe not then. And with the domestic violence, it'd be that heated, impulsive, reactive type of violence. With that kind of violence, you'd also see coercive control behaviours as well, monitoring of the partner, keeping control not handling situations, not experiencing a strong sense of control over the person, so constantly trying to get control. And those kind of people often can't hold down a job either because they're reactive. I think this person would have a more unstable relationship history, unstable employment history, simply because of his personality traits.
Do you think the person responsible had a history of sexual violence?
Yeah, I think he would have forced himself onto other women. And I don't think this was the first time he's ever done that. What seems to have happened is that he and Rachelle were interacting with one another probably for at least an hour or maybe 2 hours or so. And at some point, the offender has decided, well, I want sex. And he's used force to do it. He may have tried to convince her, and maybe some things happened consensually perhaps, or maybe the entire event was forceful. We don't know at this point.
So potentially a highly compulsive sex offender.
Yeah, someone who's going to act out and feels some kind of entitlement also over women, and probably is quite misogynistic, I would expect.
The man that Chris Illingsworth just profiled bears a resemblance to the prime suspect in Rachelle's murder, her boss, Kevin Stephen Carell. Kevin strenuously denies any involvement in Rachelle's death. He has willingly participated in 3 records of interview with police, including giving a detailed account of his movements on the 7th of June 2001, although he did not have any alibi witnesses to back him up. A coronial inquest was held into Rachelle's death. At the end of the inquest in 2008, the coroner made an open finding in relation to Rachelle's death, and True Crime Australia is not saying he is guilty of any crimes, just that there are reasonable grounds for suspecting he committed rapes in the past that he was charged with, and reasonable grounds to suspect he may have been involved in Rachelle's murder. Remember, Kevin changed his name from Cornwall to Carell sometime before he arrived at Camden Holden. You're about to meet 2 brave women who survived being attacked at knife point in the 1980s. They identified Kevin Cornwall as their attacker, but he was later acquitted in both cases. We're not using the women's real names. Just a heads up, you're about to hear survivor accounts of sexual violence that some listeners may find upsetting. Pay attention to the alibi Kevin gives police when questioned over each of the attacks.
Jane? I'm Ashley.
How are you going?
Oh, nice to meet you.
You too. I just had a look at your picture up again to make sure that I got you.
So, Jane, take me back to November 1980. You were a mum of 2 young boys. What was your life like? What were you up to?
My life was good, and I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and had a lovely boyfriend, and life was good.
And where were you living?
I was living in Punchbowl.
I understand you put an ad in the paper.
Yes, we put an ad in the paper. We had my sister living there beforehand, and she moved out, so we wanted somebody else to rent to help us get the rent up. So we put an ad in the paper for someone to rent the room.
And did you get much of a response from that ad?
Yes, we got a response from a young man that came by at 6 o'clock at night and then came back later on.
Do you remember that man, and do you remember him first coming to the house and looking at the house?
Yes, I remember him coming in to have a look at the room and the kitchen and the lounge room, and I remember him coming back.
When he was looking in the house and talking to you, did you feel uneasy at any stage about his visit?
No, not at all. He's quite nice.
Was he interacting with the kids?
The kids were in bed. Both my children were in bed at that stage.
Kevin Cornwall admits he did go to Jane's house at Punchbowl in Western Sydney on the evening of the 19th of November 1980 to check out that room she was advertising to rent. Detectives found Jane's address written on a piece of paper in his pocket. Detectives asked Kevin if the handwriting on the paper was his, and this is what he told them.
Yes, but how do you know it was me?
These are Kevin's words, voiced by an actor.
I drove to Liverpool and stopped at the shopping centre. I bought tea there and a takeaway food bar and took the meal home. I had a conversation with a girl there who knows.
Kevin's mother and his wife at the time gave evidence during the trial to support Kevin's alibi. We've beeped Kevin's former wife's name to protect her identity.
He returned later that night, and I was walking down the hall to re-show him the lounge room and that, and he pulled a knife on me.
And what happened next?
And then he proceeded to tell me that if I didn't do what he said, he would kill my kids. Well, both were sleeping in the front room, which he knew they were because I'd told him the first time. And so I did what he said, and he raped me.
Jane says with a knife to her throat, he ordered her into the lounge room and told her to undress. Kevin allegedly told her he'd killed a cop and raped a woman before, and he wouldn't hesitate in killing her or her children. During the attack, the doorbell rang. It was another man interested in the room for rent. That witness said a man he knew as Kevin Cornwall answered the door and said she is not here, she is being called away to the country. Her boyfriend has been killed in a car smash. The witness also told police he recognised Kevin from his local club.
What do you remember about his demeanour?
Really just mechanical. Just do this, do that. Just mechanical. He wasn't there that long, probably half an hour or so. Do this, do that, get in the shower. It's like looking into somebody's eyes and you can see their soul. He hasn't got one. There's nothing there. It's like he'd just done it so many times before, and just to go ahead and rape at his pleasure. And after the rape, he told me to get into the shower, stand there, and not come out for half an hour.
When was the moment that you realised he'd left and you'd survived this?
When I heard the door click. My shower was out the back, and the door was open in the shower, And I heard the front door, because it was a long hallway, I heard the front door click, and that's when I got out and checked on my children.
You must have raced
And I
in there so
put
quickly.
the lock on the door. Couldn't afford to fall apart because I had children, so I just rang my sister and said, come and get me, something's happened.
What was going through your mind when this had all unfolded?
Why? Just why? Why would you do that to a mother of 2 kids? Why would you threaten 2 children that could never hurt you? He just knew what to say, especially when he rang me back up again. When he rang me, he said, if you report me, I will come back and kill you and your children. It was like it had all been rehearsed before.
What do you remember about those threats that he said to you?
Just that I just knew that he was never going to stop by the way he threatened me. So I knew I had to do something, so I told the police.
You called your sister.
Yeah.
She must have raced over.
She did, yeah. She came over, we bundled the kids into the car, and we went off to the police station, and I told them my story, and they were terrific detectives that took on the case. And then I went to the hospital, and my sister took the children to her place and stayed with them, and the hospital was great. Then I went back to the police station and started looking through some mugshots. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mugshots. Couldn't tell you how many was there. And then I found him. Just when I was just about to give up and say I can't look at any more, I found his face and showed the police.
And what was it about that photo that you recognised of your attacker?
You couldn't forget his face. He had a mole between his eyes, and you just could not forget his face anyway, because it only happened a couple of hours before then. So it was so fresh in my mind, and I'll never forget him. I'll never forget him ever, but he'll never be a part of my life.
What stood out to me when I saw archive footage of Kevin attending Rachelle's inquest in 2006 is he did have a distinctive bump or raised growth, like a mole, in the middle of his forehead. However, in the most recent photos of Kevin captured through our investigation, the growth is no longer visible. To see images of Kevin, head to our website, dearrachelle.com.au.
And when you told the police, this is him, this is the man who attacked me, what did they say?
They knew him. They knew exactly what his MO was like. And as I told them that he'd come and answered an ad in the paper for a room for rent, and they said that's exactly his MO. He's done it before. They knew who he was, and they went out after him.
And you pushed through that fear and you went to court and faced him in court after he was charged with your rape. It was 1982, just over a year after the attack, and Kevin Stephen Cornwall was on trial for your rape. Can you tell me about that trial?
Not anything I'd wish on anybody, because you have to prove that he's done it, and they bring up all your past, which I was told beforehand, before I went to court, and was still prepared to go to stop a monster. And
Take your time, it's okay.
anyway, I tried to get through it. And when the court case was over and the jury couldn't come to a decision, I just told them that he'd never stop.
You told the jury that?
Yep.
I just, to think about you going through that trial and then bringing up your past, what were they bringing up?
When I was 14 years old, I was in a girls' home, which had nothing to do with this. I mean, I was 23 years old now, and my life was great, and All they did was bring up my past and nothing about him, which very unfair.
You felt like you were on
trial. Yep. That's what they made you feel like, especially his lawyer.
There was a man who gave evidence that came to the door that night during your attack, and he gave evidence and recognised Kevin from the club. So there were two people that positively identified him, and yet he still got away with it.
Yes, he certainly did. It's very hard to convince a jury to put somebody away that's done something so horrendous. But I don't know why they didn't.
Kevin admits to being at the home that night to inspect the property, but he denied that he returned and said that there was a man of European appearance at the property. Could you have been mistaken?
Never. No, I could not mistake that face, ever. And as I said, I went through hundreds and hundreds of photos, so many that they were all starting to blur into one until I was just about to give up, and there he was. So there's no way I can mistake that face.
Did you regret going to court?
No, never regretted it. Never regretted it at all. I was hoping that at least if they'd put him away for a while, he couldn't hurt anybody else. But as I said, he will never stop, ever stop until they put him away.
Is that what drove you to take it all the way to court, was your fear of him hurting other women?
Yes, that's exactly why I took it to court, because I didn't want anybody else to have to go through what I went through. And obviously he seeks out people with children so that he can have that get threat against them to say, I will hurt you and your children. And any mother is not going to get their child hurt. So... But that's what he wants. He wants you to do that. He wants you to think, I'll come back. But don't let him get it over you.
How old are you now, and do you ever think back to that night that you were attacked?
I'm 67 years old, and I don't give him any thought because he's not going to take over my life. I just forget him because he's not worth anything. He's just a speck of nothing.
He now goes by the name of Kevin Stephen Carell. Have you ever heard of that name before?
No, never heard of it.
His name was made public in and around after Rachelle's death because he was named as a suspect in her inquest in 2006. Of course you wouldn't have known and put two and two together because you knew him as Kevin Cornwall.
Yep, Kevin Stephen Cornwall.
What was your reaction when I told you that he'd changed his name?
You can run away, but you can't hide. I don't know what to say. He doesn't scare me at all anymore. Not one bit.
Kevin maintains his innocence and was acquitted by a jury. And his alibi? He stopped at a shopping centre in Liverpool, and he also went to a takeaway food shop where he picked up dinner. Jane isn't the only woman to accuse Kevin Stephen Cornwall of a sexually motivated attack. There are 4 women we know about, and you're going to hear from other alleged victims. But it's important to stress, Kevin pleaded not guilty to all charges, and he was later acquitted by 4 separate juries. 3 years after Jane was raped, police were hunting the perpetrator of an alarmingly similar crime, this time in the inner Sydney suburb of Darlinghurst in 1983. Here's the ad that was placed in the classified section of the Daily Telegraph that year.
Stunning blonde Gold Coast model available for fashion and figure photography. Phone this number.
Flight VA17 has landed.
I've just flown in to meet that model. We'll call her Nicole. She's accompanied by her giant German Shepherd to pick me up from the airport.
Alrighty. I'm as nervous as sad.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Come on, puppy.
2 weeks before the attack, a man who called himself Greg Hawkins responded to Nicole's ad and visited her Darlinghurst unit to discuss a photo shoot. He claimed he was a photographer wanting to book her for a semi-nude shoot. During the visit, Nicole says he asked her to show him her body. She refused, demanding he provide more information and identification. But he could only produce a business card with the name Greg Hawkins printed on it. Nicole says he used his finger to cover the bottom of the business card. On that occasion, he left without incident. 2 weeks later, she answered the door to a monster. It's been 40 years, but Nicole's memory of that day she was attacked while her 11-month-old baby boy slept in his cot is vivid.
We were going to be going downtown and I was going to buy a high chair because I'd had some money that I could go buy his high chair. And that's why he was asleep and I was all dressed and ready and I was just waiting for him to wake up and then we were going to go downtown. So when I knock at the door, I don't remember that I was expecting anyone because my intention was we were going to be going downtown and get the high chair. So the knock at the door, I opened it and it was bam, instant. Balaclava. The knife was like held up here. He pushed me back into it. There were a couple of steps up into the unit. And he just pushed me like into the unit, and then the knife was at my throat. He had the knife up and down my throat like instantly, and I remember thinking, holy shit, I'm gonna die. This is Sydney. That's what I thought. I was gonna die. I remember him mumbling something about what money for drugs. We were smoking pot, and I remember going into the kitchen and getting the mull bowl, but it was like hardly anything there, and I don't even think that he took it. I went to my bag that was hanging over the chair, and I got my purse out. I don't remember the order, but he took that money.
And that was the money for the high chair?
Yeah.
It was $70. That would have been a lot of money back then.
No, yes, it was. Yeah, it was a lot of money, and I had secretly saved that money, and I remember I had it was hidden in my cupboard in the bedroom. Sorry, can we just...
We can stop. We can pause for sure. Take your time.
No, I got to just get it all out, and then, yeah. So he was saying, money for drugs, wanted drugs, and like I said, I went to the mail bowl. Don't remember whether he did that. He had the money, and then it was. I'm not real clear on how quickly it happened, but he told me to get into the bedroom and get my clothes off. I can't remember how he said it, but the next sequence from when he was standing there saying all that and the knife was going up and down my throat, I went into the bedroom and obviously he followed, and I've just always undressed from the bottom down, never the top down. And I remember I had I like this, I guess, 3/4 pants on, back then they had zips, yeah.
Around the bottom of the leg?
Yeah,
on the side
up
there?
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And went in there and I was trying to stall, and so I remember taking my pants off first. Oh, fuck. I sort of unzipped them and I took my pants off, and then I remember saying, "What are you doing back here?" That was a big mistake because it was like his eyes, and maybe his nose was cut out as well, or I just remember his nose. I remember his eyes and I remember his nose. I could just see from that part, it was the person that I knew as Greg Hawkins. It was like instant. Saying, what are you doing back here? Like, that was stupid of me. Like, why did I say that? He just he stopped instant, and he just sort of like looked at me, and I just, thought, oh, fuck. I realised, oh God, what did you say that for? And I thought, oh shit, here it comes. It's going to be bad. Like, it's going to be like worse now. But yeah, he was definitely taken aback that I recognised him. I can't remember what was said, but then like from, I got myself around to the side of the bed, and all the ceramic bunnies were like on the ledge like this. And as I was sort of like trying to pretend to like start to get everything off, I don't know. I just went to the window ledge, and just in one movement, I just sort of like, I had the window in one hand, and I grabbed for the biggest bunny in the other hand, and I remember opening it and then just throwing it down, and then he just came straight at me, and it was just, and
With his fist?
yeah, closed, hard fist, and I just went down. It was like, and I just went smack down on the bed, and I think he thought that because that happened at the window, because it was a main road, he would have thought, oh, someone's going to see that and they're going to come up, and that's why he took off. I don't know. But I'm thankful that I didn't get raped. Straight, as soon as I sort of like went down on the bed, because I think that's what he was thinking, he told me he sort of like, he must have got me. I can't remember the sequence of how I physically got from the bed and then straight into the bathroom, and I had to get under the shower and stay there. And I remember standing there. I still had, because back then too, you wore socks with your shoes. Yeah, anyway. So obviously I kicked off my shoes at some point, and I remember standing in the shower with my socks on, because I remember that feeling of not bare feet in the shower, and I had my socks on and my knickers and my top, and my face was just like, and I was just in a total daze of what was happening, and just like stunned, and then I stood under the shower for I don't know how long, and eventually I got out of the shower because I didn't know whether he was still in the unit or not, and I got out of the shower. I vaguely remember going into little one's bedroom. I went to the phone and I rang 000, and I remember saying this stupid thing. I think, get a squad car here. Like, who says that? So after, I don't know how long I was on the phone to AAA, but eventually I do remember when there was like the knock at the door and they were saying it was the police. I remember sitting there. I remember sitting on the floor down there and like huddled up, and I remember crying and crying and crying, and I said because I wasn't game to open the door after what had happened, and I remember saying, how do I know it's you? And they kept on saying, well, we're the police. And I remember asking, can you put your badge under the door? But because it was like a thick fireproof door and there was carpet, they said it wouldn't fit under the door. But I remember it would have been a good, easy, like 10 minutes before I was game enough to actually then open the door. And there were 2 cops there, 2 uniform.
How terrifying. Just the whole thing. How do you feel?
I haven't gone through that sequence of events. I don't think ever.
The badly bruised 22-year-old mum was taken by police to nearby St Vincent's Hospital to be treated for facial injuries.
I've always had long nails, and I think these 2 nails sort of like broke in the scuffle of it all. The detective was just trying to make light of the situation, and he said, "Look at you, you're black and blue, you're lucky to be alive, and you're worrying about 2 broken nails." Yeah, I remember he was like nice and he said that. Then when I went and had the x-rays taken, I remember something up against my face in order to have the x-ray taken, and I remember that hurting like crazy, and that still to this day, this area still hurts. Like if you wash your face too hard, or if you've got a little one sitting on your lap, you know how they tend to sort of like rock back and forward? Yeah, the amount of times that my kids would do that. And so as soon as I get bumped in that area, automatically that whole scenario of the person with the balaclava and getting bashed comes instantly into my mind. It's never anything else. That just comes instantly into my mind. And then I'm back in that mindset, and then it can last weeks, months, and I'm floored. I'm down for the count. I'm hyper, and that's why I have a German Shepherd, because then I know that I can feel safe because no one comes near you with the German Shepherd.
After being released from hospital, detectives escorted Nicole into the city station to see if she could identify her attacker.
But I remember them saying that they'd have to go and have a look at the mugshots and don't worry, if you see him in the photos, it'll just jump right out at you. And that's exactly what happened. When I was looking through all the photos, it just jumped. Yeah, literally jumped. And I still have that memory of his face still to this day, of those little photos.
The face that jumped out of that photo was Kevin Stephen Cornwall's, the man Nicole knew as photographer Greg Hawkins. Coincidentally, Greg Hawkins was also the name of Kevin's brother-in-law. Kevin's Liverpool home was then raided by police. Several items were seized, including a 6-inch knife, a wallet, business cards, a blue and white striped beanie with the word Sharks on it, sand shoes, and a blue and white long-sleeve jumper. The real Greg Hawkins told police he'd given Kevin 10 of his business cards to generate new life insurance customers. Kevin was refused bail and sent to Long Bay Jail on remand. 2 weeks after Nicole's attack, a mystery man phoned her unit. Nicole's husband answered, and this is what he told police. These are his words, but not his voice.
On the 13th of October 1983, I was at home with my wife when the telephone rang. I answered it and said, "Hello?" A male voice said, "Mr. I said, "Yes?" He said, "I want to give you some advice about your family." I said, "Who are you?" He said, "A mate of mine is going down because your wife reckons he attacked her. It's bullshit." I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I was with him, mate, half an hour after he was supposed to have done it. He couldn't have done it. We were doing a job." I said, "Why don't you give your mate Cornwall a message from me? Tell him he'd better pray that he stays in jail, because if he doesn't, praying won't help him." He said, "Oh, you're tough, mate. Real tough. Just remember, if your wife puts him away, You and her and your family can take your choice of a shotgun or broken bones. I said, look mate, we've got no hassles with you. Cornwell did it and he's going to wear it. He said, he didn't do anything. I told the police that I saw him within half an hour, but they didn't believe me. They believed your bitch of a wife. I said, listen, fuckwit, if you got a problem with me, get your ass over here now. He said, don't worry, mate. I know where you live. You better be ready. The door won't stop me. I'll blow it open. I said, forget the door. I'll be waiting outside. The caller hung up. I would describe the voice on the telephone as being that of an Australian male, about 25 years old. His voice was educated, but he sounded like an ocker. I could hear background noises over the telephone, like that in a hotel, but the caller didn't sound as though he was drunk. After the call, my wife and I were greatly upset by it, and I have grave fears for the safety of both myself and my family.
You are now going to hear a transcript from Kevin's recorded interview with police when he was questioned over the armed attack on the young mum at Darlinghurst at 1:45 p.m. on the 29th of September 1983. This is an actor, not the voice of Kevin Cornwall.
At about 1 o'clock, I walked up to the phone to ring the Electricity Commission about extensions of time for payment. I walked across the road to the garage at the end of our street and bought a newspaper, the Daily Telegraph. I then walked home. I was home for about 5 minutes. Then I left and went to Liverpool, to the Youth and Community Centre. I was only there for about 5 minutes and then drove to a block of flats where I knew Greg Climson lived to get a gearbox for my car. I went to park my car, and when a lady came up to me and asked me not to park there as her husband was going to back a truck onto the caravan, I moved the car to the other side of the road and asked that same lady did she know Greg Climson and what unit he lived in. She replied no, and I said thanks anyway. I'll see if I can find him. I saw number 5 above the garage door where I'd seen Greg working on his car previously. So I went to Unit 5 and knocked on the door, but no one answered. I went back out the front of the units and again had a conversation with the lady I spoke to earlier. And then I got back in my car and headed towards home, but decided to get some lunch for my wife and myself.
The next part of Kevin's alibi will sound extraordinarily familiar to you.
I stopped at a takeaway food bar in Terminus Street, Liverpool, where I purchased a battered sav, a piece of fish, a bag of chips, and a loaf of bread. I'd asked the man behind the counter what sort of fish it was, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper, the word hake, and he went to the fridge and pulled out a tray of fish, and he explained that it was the only fish he uses. I paid for my goods and went straight home.
Kevin told police he arrived home at approximately 2:10. Detectives interviewed witnesses connected to the address where Kevin said he'd been on the afternoon in question. A resident by the name of Kayleen Musgrove was shown a photograph of Kevin and detailed her interaction with him that afternoon. She says Kevin parked his white Holden station wagon in her driveway and she asked him to politely move it. Kevin then asked her if she'd seen his brother-in-law. Kayleen's husband said he didn't actually know his brother-in-law. She said the man she identified as Kevin then walked over to his car and drove off. Kayleen Musgrove told detectives he appeared very nervous and tense. Nicole's attack happened at 1:45 p.m. at Darlinghurst, which is about 34 kilometres away from Liverpool. It's around a 50-minute drive. Kayleen Musgrove said her interaction with Kevin happened between 2:30 and 3 p.m, making it very possible Kevin could have made it back to Liverpool in that time frame. The service station attendant at Liverpool was also shown a photograph of Kevin and asked if he came in to buy a newspaper on Thursday the 29th of September. She told police, "I don't remember what time he came in exactly, but it was between 2:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. that day. Remember, Kevin told police he was there just after 1 p.m. Kevin Stephen Cornwall, who was 27 at the time, was charged with attempted sexual assault, assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and armed robbery. Cornwall was later committed to stand trial, and Nicole remembers his demeanour at court.
Smug, yeah. Smug and, yeah, with the attitude that I didn't do this. Like, it wasn't as simple as just having to go through that trauma of going to court. Like, I'd never been inside a court ever. So to be confronted with that is mind-boggling anyway. It's scary. Like, I was, 22? Like, I was a kid. I was very immature, 22. Like, I was a scared little, what's the lowest, form of a being? I was like a scared little ant. I felt like nothing. And yeah, so the jury people, I remember them looking at me and judging, and there was one particular day I had to wear this thin black tight skirt and this red off the shoulder jumper. Like, I looked like a tart, I looked like a slut, but that's what my ex-husband did to me.
Do you think that played into the decision of the jury?
Absolutely, I do.
So why do you believe that Kevin got away with it?
Because the jury only heard about this one instance, and they've got this female sitting in front of them that on one particular day looked like a tart.
At the time, Nicole often felt pressure from her then husband to dress a certain way. She thinks it affected the outcome of the trial. Kevin Cornwall was acquitted of all charges by the jury, just like he was in a separate rape trial a year earlier. Fast forward to 2001. Kevin goes by the surname Carell and is under investigation for the murder of his 23-year-old protégé, Rachelle Charles. What went through your mind when you heard that he'd been investigated for the murder and suspected rape of a young woman?
I felt scared because it's still always, obviously, is he going to find me again? So, yeah, I instantly I got scared for my safety. Yeah, the instant that it came back into my life again, yeah, I got scared.
It's taken so much courage for you to speak out.
But it's only because I want to see justice.
Kevin Stephen Cornwall maintains his innocence, and he was acquitted by a jury in both cases. I've asked Damien Loon to have a good look over the evidence in Jane and Nicole's cases. Let's get his take on them.
It's all about deception, first of all. He goes to Jane, where she's placed an advertisement in the local paper for someone to share a house on the pretense of doing that, and she's violently assaulted. So after the attack, he allegedly tells the victim, Jane, to shower. Now, you have to look at the reasons why he's asking for that to happen, and it's perhaps maybe of the DNA contamination that he may be afraid of. With the second victim, Nicole, he's posed as a photographer. Now, this is, again, deception. He provided a business card with a name, and Nicole immediately recognised who he was. He was a person who had been there before pretending to be the photographer. Now, again, we have deception on this part.
How much weight do you give when they point out someone in mugshots?
Photograph identification is very difficult to say at the very least in investigation phases. However, you have to really believe what the victim is telling you. If they recognise that person, and sometimes you can just see it in their eyes when they're perusing the photo identification, and normally it's done on a laptop, but back in that era it was done with mugshots, basically. And you can see their reaction straight away and their eyes dilate. You can see that the body become tense, their movements, they sweat, and you can obviously see the fear coming out in them. And to me, that was always a firm belief that the person who's pointing out this offender to me is believable, and that's the offender that's been involved in the attack.
What's the likelihood that two women could mistakenly point out Kevin in a mugshot?
Well, this is very difficult to believe. I firmly believe that if two women have identified him in mugshot identification, then Kevin's got some problems, because clearly they can identify him and they've pointed the finger saying he's the person responsible. It's unlikely that would happen. I've never seen it. I've seen people pick out the same person in photograph identification, and you're just building up your evidence against this person. And for two people who don't know each other to point him out is somewhat great evidence for the prosecution.
In those cases, well, in all of the cases against Kevin, he was acquitted. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, difficult to say why he was acquitted and the reasons why. Now, it's the onus on the prosecution to prove otherwise, and that can be difficult at the best of times. And sometimes the victims, when they're giving examination or they're under cross-examination, may withhold some information because, A, they're embarrassed by what's happened, they're afraid, and it's difficult. And you really have to think, the prosecution, and it's always on the onus of the prosecution to prove the offences. But it does happen. Sometimes we just don't get the verdict we want, even though we know we've got the right person.
Are there any similarities in Kevin's alibi in all the historical matters he's been investigated over?
Absolutely, and they're nearly all identical. And I'll go back to on the night that Rachelle left the Camden Holden to go to somewhere. He says he went shopping in Campbelltown. He visited his girlfriend home at Picton, but she wasn't there. Then he says, and this is where it rings alarm bells to me, he went to grab some fish and chips and a battered sab at Tarmore, and he also visited a service station that night. Now, this alibi is similar to something that happened 18 years earlier, and Kevin was questioned over his movements following a sexually motivated attack on a young woman in Darlinghurst. Now, he told police it wasn't him. He said, I was getting fish and chips and I ordered a battered salve, piece of fish, bag of chips and a loaf of bread. Now, let's go back to the night that Rachelle disappeared. He went to grab some fish and chips and a battered salve at Tarmore. In another matter, and this is a case where a young mum was raped at Punchbowl, he says he was getting takeaway. Now, you have to ask, is there a common thread here, or does he just like his greasy food?
Rachelle's sister Christy is incredibly grateful to both Jane and Nicole for sharing their stories with me to shine a light on Rachelle's case. Christy recorded a video message for both women, which I played to them.
I just wanted to pass on how thankful we are here at Team Shell. My mum also passes on her thanks. Honestly, we cannot thank you enough. I really hope that what you've done today hasn't opened up too many old wounds. I'm sure that it has. But you are so incredibly brave. And even though I don't know you, I am just so proud of you. We need to stand up and we need to stand together. And even though I can't know you or see you or meet you, know that I stand with you. And I just think that you're incredible. Thank you so much for helping us give Shell a voice. And even though it would have been really painful, I'm sure, I hope that you feel empowered. And thank you for helping us to empower Rachelle. If I was there, I'd give you a massive hug. Honestly, I have no words. Thank you so much, and I hope you're okay.
How did you feel listening to that message?
It's beautiful. I hope she gets justice for her sister. I really do.
I feel quite empowered, and if you need anything else that could help, I'm more than happy, because I feel different. I'm all good.
We're all so grateful for you being so brave at this stage in your life. You didn't have to speak to me. You didn't have to share your story. it would have been easier for you to just hang up the phone.
You can't do that when something like this happens, because you've got to, don't let him scare you.
There'll be other women for sure. I have full confidence in that.
Telling you, you need justice. She needs justice, that young girl.
And like Christy says, we have to stand together.
Yep. The more of us, the better.
I would want to do anything.
I just want to help her.
Thank you again for being so kind to me. That was very difficult.
He's not going to ever scare me again. You can run away, but you can't hide.
On the next episode of Dear Rachelle.
I met Kevin at a singles night. He told me that he was a psychologist.
Alice had received phone calls from a gentleman who was a previous partner that he had the house bugged.
I said, you just keep right away.
He'd have his friends take care of me. I'd be dead by the end of the month.
And with that, he said, you're just a prick tease, and one of these days they're going to find you slit from the fanny to the throat in a car park dead.
Dear Rachelle is a multimedia production from True Crime Australia. If you want to be the first to find out what happens next, go to dearrachelle.com.au. That's where News Corp Australia subscribers get early access to podcast episodes and breaking news in our live investigation before anybody else. And you'll also find exclusive videos, interactive evidence, feature articles and more. That's dearrachelle.com.au. DEARRACHELLE.com.au. If you have any tips or confidential information to share with me, Ashley Hansen, please send an email to dearrachelle@news.com.au. Our supervising producer and audio editor is Reese Gunter. Rachel Fountain is executive producer and audio director. Our executive editor is Sarah Blake. Our senior journalist is Patrick Carline. Video editors are Gillian McNally, Owen Yang and Stephen Woods. Picture editors are Jeff Darmanin and Christy Miller. Senior camera operators are Daniel Andrews and Oscar Vieira, with sound design by Martin Peralta. Thanks also to Greg Thompson, Eleni Paneras, Shoba Rayo, Faye Gould, Vanessa Graham, Hayley Goddard, Stephen Grice, Charlotte Karp, Tina Coggins and Harry Hughes. Special thanks to the Daily Telegraph editor, Ben English. And Dear Rachelle would not be possible without the help and unwavering support of Christy and Anne Childs, Mindy Wicks, Damien Loon and Rachelle's friends. This podcast series is hosted and investigated by me, Ashley Hansen.